Hey guys, Scott here. I'm actually up early enough to see the developer update happen as it was posted. This is very exciting for me. So, we're going to go through this. I did a very quick skim to see the basic topics we're going to talk about here. But overall, I think we've got a lot of interesting stuff here. So, let's just get right into it. First is the survivor disconnect bots. So, pretty much what's going to happen now, if you have a teammate DC, you're going to get one of the AI bots instead of it just being a dead slot. This is a massive improvement to solo queue, in my opinion, because once a player disconnects, as long as you're right, not about to beat the game, game's basically over. Winning a 3v1 is almost impossible due to the way the game works. And so having an AI bot that can at the very least do generators, and honestly, probably half the time is going to be a better teammate than the one that disconnected, is going to be very, very good for solo queue. So in my opinion, this will save a lot of games that were guaranteed losses. And although they'll still be in the killer's favor because one of the players is a bot, typically that's going to be a much safer thing for the survivors to have rather than just an empty slot entirely. So this is just overall very good. Now, even if the AI is bad, even if it's bad, it's still better than having nothing. So I can't think of a single way to look at this change and find anything negative about it. It's just straight up a good thing. I guess maybe the only thing you might say it's a negative as killer, because you might end up getting better players from the bots than the people you're going against. So it might actually make the game slightly harder. But overall, this is probably one of the most universally good accepted changes they could possibly make, and I don't see a single complaint about that. Next is successful report feedback. This is good because when you report someone in DBD, it feels like you're just wasting your time. There's no feedback. You don't even know if it's doing anything, so people just stop doing it. People have learned that from Twitter and things like that. If you get feedback when the person that you report is banned or punished or anything like that, it's more of a positive feedback loop and you want to continue doing it. I don't know why. It gives you that dopamine hit. That's something you did mattered. And so having a successful report thing here is really good in my opinion. So I think that's just overall good. It'll lead to more reports. How effective the reports will be basically still are determined by the moderator team, how many they can get through and things like that. Sometimes people report people for the dumbest reasons ever. So it still has a human component that's going to be rough, but I do think this is just a nice change. Again, no real complaints about that at all. The Onryo. A little over a year ago, Sadako crawled out of a TV and into our hearts and the entity's realm for the first time. It's been interesting to see the different playstyles emerge since then, and today we have some changes in store to make the Onryo more terrifying than ever. So I briefly looked through what is changing here. Now, if I understand what they're doing, to summarize it really quick, they're basically making Condemn more of a factor in every match, while simultaneously making the Condemn strat, where you focus one survivor down and instantly kill them, less effective. And I think this is exactly how it should go. In my opinion, getting condemned should never really be the target of the killer. It should be more like pig's traps, where they're not really meant to kill you. They're meant to slow down the game by a wide margin, so then you can use your other power to actually down people. And so I think that's sort of what they're trying to do now. So here are the major changes they're doing. Now when you project to a TV, you get 75% of a condemn stack. Every survivor just gets one, as long as they're not carrying one of the tapes. So you don't have to be near the TV anymore. Everyone just gets condemned. So what this means is they're going to gain condemn stacks at a bit of a slower rate, but also a more consistent rate. It's now no longer going to be tied to one guy you're tracking. It's going to be tied to everybody. Every time you teleport is going to get more and more condemned over time. Now, the time that a TV is disabled after she projects has also been reduced to 70 seconds. It used to be 100 seconds, and that can also still be reduced even further with that on. So she's going to be teleporting way more frequently. That's a massive buff there. And that is going to make it so the condemn is being applied to all players. So as the match naturally progresses, everyone will be condemned at some point, or if they do nothing about it. The time a TV is disabled after a survivor removes the curse tape has been increased to 90 seconds. So basically what this means is they're trying to make it so, like I said, it's a more slow but consistent thing. Rather than focusing one guy down and getting them fully condemned, you're going to be spreading that condemn out to everybody, sort of like, applying Pig's head trap to everybody, where it's going to require the survivor to do a side objective in getting the tape now. They don't, they're going to be risking instant death, just like with the bear traps and Pig. So that's the whole idea that they have now. So because that they're changing it like this, projection now has a 15-second cooldown. Again, they're trying to make it so you can't just get one survivor down. They just want to give this killer overall slowdown in general, while not making the condemn strat the main thing. They've also changed how holding the tape works. So the main downside here is holding a tape no longer passively builds your condemned, which is a huge nerf. However, if you are hit with a basic attack while you have a tape, you instantly get a stack of Condemn. And if you hook a survivor holding a cursed tape, every survivor in the lobby gets a full stack of Condemn. So that is going to drastically change how Sadako is played, because really, it was kind of an unfortunate scenario with her. It's sort of like Skull Merchant, where Sadako herself is kind of a terrible killer. She's really weak. However, people did find this one particular Condemn strat and made her go from weak to actually surprisingly, annoyingly strong. The problem is it is one of the most unhealthy gameplay styles on the planet, basically involving running 4 slowdowns and slugging all 4 survivors the entire game. It's just miserable for the actual game itself. But at the same time, you couldn't really blame a Sadako for doing it, because it was not really much other way to win without doing that. So, at least against the competent team. So they're trying to avoid that. So the whole change with the tapes now, it's trying to spread it out, but also it's less likely to kill any one individual player, if that makes sense. Additionally, they can now be placed in any TV other than the one they were retrieved on, which is also a pretty big nerf. Normally, you would get the tape, you'd see the TV you have to go to. Now, typically, it wouldn't be that far, so this might only save the survivor like 4 or 5 seconds running to somewhere else. It's not that big of a deal, but basically, what this whole thing is doing is there's going to be more side objectives from the survivors and more passive slowdown from the killer, and I think that's what they're going for. To rectify a lot of the fact that you can't pin down one survivor anymore, they did make a couple of changes that are really interesting. You can no longer be stunned while demanifested. So when you're in your ghostly form, you can't be stunned anymore. So you can kind of wait in a pallet. Honestly, I could see like running Enduring now, waiting in the pallet and trying to get a same side hit when you're stunned when you uncloak, or baiting the uncloak kind of like a race, so they drop it early, then you brutal strength kick it or something like that. A lot of things that make chases a bit better. Chases are prevented when... Chases are not prevented when demanifested, making it more difficult to keep track of the Onryo's position. This doesn't mean you're not physically chasing them. It means the chase mechanic of the game is now disabled, so you're not getting chase points, you don't get the chase theme and things like that. So that's a buff to the killer, not a nerf or anything like that. Also, demanifesting now removes Bloodlust, which, I mean, that's more in line with every other killer power. That's a pretty minor thing. Whenever you're using a offensive, or, whenever you're basically using your power, you're going to lose Bloodlust. That's just how it goes. So that's fine. Her add-ons have also been changed as well, likely to accommodate the changes to Condemn. They haven't gone exactly in detail on how those are going to change, but I'm willing to bet things like the reset after you hit somebody has been nerfed. Spreading after you heal has been nerfed in some ways, and then I bet they buffed the weaker ones that, frankly, I don't even know about. So I'm curious to see what they do there, but overall, I'm not enough of an Onryo player to give a good feedback, and this is my opinion. I was playing Elden Ring when she came out. I just pretty much entirely skipped her, so I'm just going off of what I've seen really good Onryo players do, and I may be wrong with this, but it seems like that's what the devs are going for. Whether or not it's effective, they're trying to make her passive slowdown more prevalent to everybody and not screwing over one particular person. So that seems to be the goal they're going for, which I respect. I think that's a good goal. Is she going to be strong enough now? I don't know. We'll see. Hook grabs. This is a pretty drastic mechanical change. Hook grabs are now impossible. So hook grabs are when you are trying to unhook somebody, and then the killer grabs you, interrupting the grab. The guy doesn't get saved. Now you're also down. So this was a very strong tool for face camping, because you'd basically deny a person a save, meaning you would need multiple people to come save. You would need someone to fake it to bait the hit or the grab even, and then you'd need another person to come save, and it became kind of a unfun scenario. I have the weird opinion that I did not mind the grab minigame. I kind of like the mind game between killer and survivor, him faking it and me calling his fake or not calling it. Sometimes he commits on the first try, and I think he's going to fake it, and I don't get the grab. I don't know. I like that little mental mind game. I found that interesting, but I'm not going to shed a tear over hook grabs being gone. I think overall that's probably better for the health of the game, and just because I liked it doesn't mean it's good for the game. So, like I said here, typically if you're unhooking in the killer's face, he's going to hit you, you unhook, and then you hit him again. You're still going to go down, but now it's not really possible to prevent an unhook anymore, which is probably good at addressing camping. So overall, that's a good change. Brand new parts have been nerfed. They no longer save you, I think, 22 seconds. They now only save you 10 seconds. However, they now only remove charges from a toolbox. They don't remove the entire toolbox itself, or the add-on itself. So now we have a scenario where you're getting less burst window from a brand new part, which I think is good. I still think brand new parts are too strong. Now, by itself, one brand new part are not that big of a deal, but when you had multiples in a lobby, it's just genuinely unfair. And I have no problem with nerfing anything that directly affects gen speed, whether it be slowdowns or speed ups. I think gen speed is pretty decent right now, and BMPs were still a little too strong. I think this is fine. The fact that you can continue to use the toolbox after is nice. So overall, I think this is fine. I'm not going to complain about that. I don't even use BMPs, so I don't really care. That'll really only benefit me as killer. Now perk changes. First up is Coup De Grace. Coup De Grace now gets 2 tokens per generator instead of 1. There were a lot of ways to make this perk better. Some said that it would be after you hook Survivor, you get a stack. Some said that you would get more stacks after generators are completed. And it seems like they went that route. So now you're going to get 10 stacks over the course of the game rather than 5. That's a pretty big buff. I'm still not a fan of the perk. I hate it being situationally tied to essentially you starting to lose the game. But I don't think the perk is a meme anymore. I always thought this perk was absolutely terrible. But the fact that you will have 10 swings instead of 5 now is really good. I still would have preferred they changed it so it does not consume a stack until you benefit from the longer effects of a lunge. For example, if you had a short lunge on a Survivor, you would save a stack, but if you consumed a regular lunge and were holding the mouse button down still, then it would consume the lunge and make you keep going. I don't know how hard that would be to code, probably too hard, but I always thought that would be the best way to do it, because losing a stack when you don't really need to use it is always really bad, and I think that'll always be the worst part about the perk. So yeah, I don't know overall about that, but I think that's just a massive buff overall, and it might see more use because of it. Claustrophobia. This is a perk that blocked windows in a radius outside of a completed gen. It was extremely situational because there needed to be people as you're approaching the gen, as it finishes, and there need to be windows there to block for it to be useful. Pretty bad perk. Now they're just making it map wide instead of being within 32 meters. So whenever a gen's completed, every window is now just blocked. So again, this is still going to be something that's mostly out of the killer's control. When you're chasing someone and you have this perk, all of a sudden a gem might pop and the guy you're chasing might just get screwed randomly. It's not going to feel very good in Survivor to just lose because a gen got popped. And it's not even going to feel rewarding as killer because it wasn't something you did. It wasn't something in your control. It just sort of happened. I could see if you combine it with something like Tinker, so you'll have an idea of when it will finish, so you'll plan where the window block happens. That's something, but it seems like this is mostly just going to be a roll of the dice perk and get value sometimes, and sometimes you get no value. So overall, probably still not worth using. Hangman's Trick has now become Scourge Hook Hangman's Trick. This perk now reveals the auras of survivors within 8 to 9, 10 meters of a Scourge Hook whenever a survivor is being carried. I don't think that is the correct way to do it. The problem is Scourge Hooks are at the mercy of RNG. If Scourge Hooks were evenly planted in 4 corners of the map, then I think this perk would be actually very good. But the problem is sometimes they're all just clustered in one area, which means half of the map is just not being monitored in any way. So this perk is still pretty bad. I will never use this. Territorial Imperative. This is the one that reveals survivor auras when they go into the basement. They double the duration of the aura reading, and they also reduce the range you have to be away from the basement for it to trigger. They also increase the cooldown, but it doesn't really matter because it's typically only one time you're going to get to use it. Does that make it good enough to use? Probably not. It's better than before, don't get me wrong, but still probably not good enough to use. Remember Me. This slows down the exit gates based on the amount of times you hit the obsession during a match. It makes it longer for non-obsessions to open the gate. And so they basically just buffed it from 16 to 24 seconds, which is pretty noticeable. That's a solid 50% increase, though. So that's a pretty solid buff. I still think No Way Out is just the better form of Remember Me, but no reason you can't combine the two for a very strong endgame build. So that's a nice change to see. Crowd Control. This one is actually nuts. Hex Crowd Control is whenever Survivor vaults a window, it's blocked for a few seconds. That's a very powerful effect. Kind of like Bamboozle with you without you having to vault it. However, it's tied to a Hex Totem, and so it can just be destroyed. However, now it's blocked for a full minute. Entity blocked for a full minute whenever Survivor vaults a window. That's pretty damn significant. So depending on the map, you can lock down sections of the map entirely just from a Survivor vaulting at one time. It could even carry on to different chases and things like that. So honestly, this is pretty interesting. The fact that it's tied to a Hex means it did need to be very strong. So that's an appropriately strong effect. A full minute of window blocking for a single vault while the Hex is up is pretty good. I could see this actually getting use in Hex builds now. That's actually not that bad. Trail of Torment. This allows you to hide their Territorius and seek survivors. I believe it's after you kick a generator. Since it disables the next time a survivor loses a health state, there often isn't much pressure on the survivors to venture over and stop the gen from regressing, which is true. To make this perk more threatening, Trail of Torment will now only deactivate when the affected generator stop regressing, not when a health state is lost. I think that's fair. Is it still worth using? Probably not. Gen kicking has kind of gone back down in strength ever since Call of Brine and Overcharge were nerfed. So overall, probably not something you'll see too often, but that's a cool change nonetheless. Next, Survivor Perks. Prove Thyself has been nerfed, which I don't understand. I truly did not think this perk was very good. I think it's one of the biggest debate perks of all time. It's basically only good for stopping 3 gens, which is good, don't get me wrong, but the fact that you have to group up with people made that perk, it sort of just countered itself. But they reduced it from 15 to 10%. And they also removed the blood point bonus for co-op players for some reason, because I don't know, fuck you. I think that's a bad change. I did not think that perk needed to be nerfed. As a killer, I didn't think it needed to be nerfed. I didn't even use it as Survivor. I thought it was honestly better for me most of the time, because I know when I'm playing on Survivor and I have like 2 people with Prove Thyself run up to me and they sit on the gem with me, and then the killer comes and he just slugs all 3 of us. I'm like, great, I'm glad we grouped up. So I like this perk as killer because it caused people to group up, which makes it easier to win the game. And the effect it had was very minimal. It saved like 6 seconds on a gen. Like, who cares? But now it's gonna save you even less time. I don't think this perk needed to be nerfed. I don't agree with this change basically at all. Also, what a fuck you to just remove the blood point bonus. Like, why? Blast Mine has been buffed, which is great news. It now stays active on the generator for basically 3 times as long, which is excellent. More Blast Mine plays need to happen. We just need more perks like Blast Mine. Perk is absolutely hilarious. I love this perk. Wiretap has also been increased by a pretty massive amount. It is now 120 instead of 80 seconds, so it seems they want to incentivize these perks a bit more. And they've also standardized the time it takes to activate both of them to 50%. Overall, though, I mean, that's a pretty sizable buff to these. I guess this is slight nerf to, because it used to be you could activate it a bit sooner. But overall, I'm kind of glad that this got buffed because those perks are pretty fun to use. Sabotage, or Saboteur in general. The time it takes to sabo a hook without a toolbox now is 2.3 seconds instead of 2.5. So the killer's swing cooldown is 3 seconds, which doesn't give you really enough time to get out of range if you want to run in and sabo a hook, and then, like, run in, take a hit, sabo a hook, and then run away. I'm curious if this 0.2 seconds will give you enough time to take a hit, sabo a hook, and then run away. It's going to be really close. Maybe if you run perfectly in a straight... I can't imagine 0.2 seconds. I'm going to have to test that. Because if that's the difference between being able to sabo a hook and run away and not, that is a massive buff. But if it's not enough for that, then it doesn't really accomplish anything. So it's going to come down to that exact timing there, and I'm not really sure. I can't just see that with numbers. Clairvoyance. Now you can activate it by blessing a totem instead of just cleansing. That's nice. This is actually a pretty good aura reading perk overall, so I'd like to see more people using that. And the fact that you can combo with boons now makes sense because it's tied to Michaela too. That's actually a pretty cool change. Breakout. The speed at which survivors wiggle has been increased by 5%, but the range has been reduced to 5 instead of 6 meters. So you have to be slightly closer, but they also break out slightly faster. It's pretty easy to avoid a killer's hits while you have that haste buff, and the killer is slowed down unless they have agitation, so this is not really that big of a deal. I would overall consider that a buff to the perk itself. Buckle up. Upon healing a survivor from the dying state, both you and the heal survivor gain the endurance status effect for 6 to 10 seconds. That's kind of nice that it gives you endurance yourself. I have to wonder how this is sort of different from Made for This, though, because Made for This, while injured, you get a bonus endurance when you heal somebody. So, unless I might be misunderstanding how Made for This works here, but it feels like that's functionally the same thing. I'm probably wrong about that, and someone in chat will correct me, but it seems like it's the same thing, but I think I'm just wrong about that. Smash Hit. This is a pretty interesting buff. They've basically halved the exhaustion back down to 20 seconds. For those who don't know, when Sprint Burst originally came out, it was a 20-second cooldown. Exhaustion didn't even exist. So seeing that 20-second number is kind of crazy again. The thing is, Smash Hit is arguably the hardest actual exhaustion perk to use in the game because a lot of killers have powers that just destroy pallets or they can respect pallets safely. It's pretty rare. Not rare, but it's not super guaranteed to get a stun on a killer anymore. So the fact that they buffed it this heavily, I wonder if you can make a build with like Vigil and Smash Hit and get multiple Smash Hits per chase. As long as you use your Smash Hit to get far away and get to another loop, you can start walking around the loop again, wait for the killer to see which side they're coming. I bet you could recover in like 14 seconds. You can get your exhaustion back and try to use it again, which would give you an enormous amount of distance because Smash Hit gives you 4 seconds of burst, not 3, like the other perks. So it's a bit stronger because it's harder to do, but it's a pretty sizable buff. I think Smash Hit's a pretty decent perk, so that's cool. Spine Chill, they removed the terror radius visualization of this perk. I don't know why they just keep stabbing this perk in the face. Poor Spine Chill. A couple of killer tweaks as well. Pyramid Head, now you have to be 10 meters away instead of 5 meters away, or the cages will respawn. Basically, we found people were just proxy camping. They were standing decently far away from the cage, but still close enough to get right in range, and then just they can just wait for the unhook to happen and then just, hit both of them and then farm them. It was pretty dumb. So they're increasing that to 10 meters. I think that's good. Prevent camping and tunneling a bit more. I think that's solid. Spirit is finally getting some changes. Notably absent is Blight for some reason. He's somehow like the fast killer he is, just dodging all these nerfs. But Mother-Daughter Ring has finally been nerfed by 15%, which is pretty massive. It used to be 40%, which was just ridiculous. Now it's down to 25%, which is more fitting for an iridescent add-on that has a downside. So still insanely strong, but no longer ridiculously game-breakingly strong. I think that's a pretty fair nerf overall. They also nerfed Cherry Blossom, which was commonly used to mitigate the downside of not seeing scratches with Mother-Daughter Ring. And you need to be within 4 meters instead of, I think it was 5. Oh no, 3 instead of 4. So they just nerfed it by a meter. It's still pretty good. Amulet, the Amulets and Talisman. Each of these add-ons increase the duration of Yamoko's haunting. However, since the spirit's power recharges over a set time instead of duration, this also meant these add-ons had hidden secondary effect of making her power recharge faster. This is very true, and those add-ons were better than the recharge add-ons like Rusty Flute every time. It made no sense. So I'm glad they fixed that. They should not have done that. They should not have had that effect. But now, because they did fix that, they buffed the increase of the add-ons that increase the recovery time, or recovery speed, rather. So now, for example, Rusty Flute, instead of 25, it's 40% increased recovery time. You're probably going to end up, if you combine Flute with a duration add-on, it's going to be roughly the same amount. Now you just have less duration now. I think that's totally fine. So overall, I think pretty good changes to Spirit add-ons. Now for Hag, Waterlogged Shoe made you, I think, it just made you a normal movement speed killer, right? It made you 4.6. But you couldn't teleport anymore. So that made her pretty damn bad, and it made her just sort of a chase-based killer. Interestingly, they've increased the movement speed boost by 7.5%. Now, 7.5% added to the base of 4.4 makes her like 4.73 meters a second, which makes her actually the fastest killer in the game. The standard killer movement speed is 4.6. She's 4.73 now with this add-on. So she's actually faster than every killer in the game, which is interesting. I'm not sure how much that's going to matter on a killer that basically just has like a worse clown power, but it's interesting that they made her unique in that sense that she's now technically the fastest killer in the game. Mint Rag, however, Mint Rag now has the ability to let you teleport everywhere, and honestly, it's a really annoying add-on because it allowed people to just basically camp you, and just as soon as the unhook happened, you could just teleport back, even if they didn't trigger a trap. It allowed for a lot of really annoying plays with Make Your Choice, and it was just generally seen as a very annoying add-on. So in order to fix that, they reduced the cooldown. All right. Half Eggshell and Cracked Turtle Egg. Now increase Phantasm Trap duration by 45%, and Cracked Turtle Egg increases Phantasm Trap by 55%. Basically, what these allowed you to do, I don't think it did what it's saying here. I think what these let you do is basically hold the power longer for the survivor to not be sure if you're going to teleport or fake the teleport. I think that's really what they were used for, but even then, they're just not very good add-ons. Pretty much Hag's main good add-ons are range add-ons, or I don't know. I hate Hag. I don't play Hag at all. I just know her range add-ons are really good, so whatever. I'm going to pretty much ignore this entire Hag portion. Coldwind Farm. Now, they talked about this earlier. They were going to be changing Cowshed and Abattoir. I don't know why they're changing Abattoir. Abattoir was probably the most balanced farm map in the game, so I don't know why they changed that. But Cowshed was an extremely problematic map, probably the most survivor-sided map in the entire game, especially to good survivors. So the fact that they are finally changing this, it seems like they're making more entrances to the barn, which is very good, because the barn was insanely strong with the 2 breakable walls as well. And they also commented on the fact that the entire outskirts of the map are essentially one giant connected loop. So a good player could chain together the entire map, and that would be utterly ridiculous. Even in the middle, you could still get useful tiles. So they said the middle was only corn, but even then you can get useful things like cow tree. So overall, it seems like they addressed the main problem with this map. This is one of the things we'll have to see in game to determine whether or not it's a good change or not. But making this map weaker survivor was a necessity because it was absurdly survivor-sided. Now, Abattoir, on the other hand, wasn't absurdly survivor-sided. I thought it was pretty balanced overall. It seems like one of the main things they did was punched a hole in the wall right here. This is that big, wall on the other side where you can go into that little freezer room. So that's going to make it a bit easier to not have to lose as much distance when a survivor's very far ahead of you, which I guess is nice. It makes it sort of a small loop instead of a giant obstructing structure. But this was also really the only main structure on the map. So I don't know. I had no problem with Rancid Saboteur, but I mean, whatever. We'll see how it works. This one I'm less on board with, but a Cowshed nerf, hell yeah, that's some good shit. They also changed some tiles as well. I don't even know what the hell this is. What is this? What is this tile? That's like a half an LT wall and a rock. God, that looks useless. All right, anyway, that's pretty much it so far. Overall, though, I think a lot of these changes are great. They made a lot of changes, which is good. I like seeing the sheer quantity of changes. A lot of these perks have become usable. Some of them haven't really changed very much. BNP changes are great. Hook grab changes are great. Onryo buffs remain to be seen. I need someone more experienced in Onryo to tell me how that's going to go, but I think the goal they're going for is pretty good. Feedback on reports is great, and Survivor Disconnect bots are great. So overall, good stuff. Pretty good update coming in July. I'm sure we'll have a PTB soon. I'm not sure if this will be the Nick Cage PTB, but I think it's going to come with those changes as well. But that's it. Thanks for watching. See ya.